name's Kelly. Today I was going to do something a little bit different. I was going to try and make my first terrarium. Gathered all my supplies. First off, water, that'll be good for afterwards. A jar, I'm using a old pickle jar. Didn't really have a use for it, so I figured why not. I was looking for a terrarium anyways. Some decorative rocks, I have these white ones, and some pink rocks. You'll need your soil. Some tools, mostly for getting them out of the pot, so I have a small spade and a rake, and then I have my plants. So the first up is the Silver Ripple. This is the Eden Russo or Emerald Ripple. It's a Peperomia, so this one does quite well in humidity, but they don't really like their leaves misted, and it can dry out a fair amount during the winter time, but it has been suggested for a terrarium. The other one that I have is this. There's actually two in here. I'm not sure what this other one is, but this one here is a lemon Maranta. And this one here, I'm not too sure. They get these big, beautiful, sort of droopy leaves eventually, and I had it a long time ago, and I can't remember what it was, but it's just a little tiny one growing in at the bottom there. The other one that I'm going to plant is another silver ripple Peperomia. So this one, the leaves get a little bit larger like this. This one I'm still propagating. You can see the little roots there in the bottle. But I had this little guy, and he's in way too big of a pot for this size of plant, but he is thriving, and I figured, you know, it's a good time of year to maybe see about putting him in terrarium. They do quite well. And the other one that I have, just to give it some height, is this Parlor Palm. This one is a root division that I got the other day, and I thought, I'm not too sure what I was going to do with it. I was going to try and propagate it, make a whole new plant, but seeing as how we're doing terrarium, I figured that would be pretty good. They don't need a whole lot of water. They like to dry out somewhat in between waterings, but they do like humidity, or they don't like it, they just thrive on it, but you can have them in a drier spot as well. So let's get started. We'll start with getting the terrarium ready. So I am going to be doing this inside because normally I would do these kind of things in the garage, but because it's been so cold lately, I'm going to go for the kitchen counter. But it's always good to have a vacuum just in case you get a dirt, kicking around or anything like that. So the first thing that I want to start off with is laying a little bit of rock at the bottom, so that way the roots can go down, and if they hit the rock, it kind of gives a barrier where the water can kind of pool in at the bottom and keep the rocks above. So I'm just going to put these in my hand. You can use a finer rock if you want. I've had these just larger ones kicking around, wasn't sure what to do with them, so we'll do that. You want just enough to kind of cover the bottom up a bit. So I think that's pretty good. The next thing that I'm going to do is put a little bit of soil in the middle. For this, I'm using sort of my basic household mix. I've got a palm soil, which has lots of charcoal in it, good for antibacterial, but it's really dark. It's just black soil, and it's really heavy. It can turn mud, so you definitely want to use some mixings with that. I have some orchid bark. Let's see if I can grab some for you. Some orchid bark and a little bit of perlite, a little bit of peat moss, and I even use a little bit of Miracle Grow just as a little bit of extra medium. So this is kind of what it looks like. You can see it's quite fluffy, quite light, and there's some orchid bark just for some added aeration. So for this one here, I'm just going to grab a small handful. I'm going to carefully try not to make too much of a mess. I'm just going to place that right in the middle. So you want to get it all around. I'm not really one for putting a barrier, so I'm just going to, or like the barrier around the side. It looks nice, but to be honest, it's going to be watered and it's just going to get muddy all around the edges. So I figured, I may as well just go all in. There we go. I'm not going to make it too terribly deep because I do want to have some room for these plants to go in. So the first one that I'm going to start with is the lower down plants. Let's actually start with the Peperomia here. Oh, that's quite, so this one's quite dry. That's the other thing. It's in terracotta. It's pretty new. It's just a little young plant. So it's almost best to, give it something smaller, something that can hold on to a little bit more moisture. I'm just going to use this sort of cover pot. It's an old candle glass, and I'm going to use that for some of the soil. I don't tend to reuse my soil. This one I probably could because it hasn't been in here that long and it's pretty small, but almost always when I'm transplanting or repotting a plant, I will get rid of the old soil, just put it in compost, in the garden, or just avoid reusing it. So this one has very small, but it is a developing root ball. So I'm just going to slowly try and take care for those delicate roots. Like those are actually doing quite good. A lot of the soil here, I can feel it's kind of holding on, which is good. That means that the plant went searching for nutrients and for water, and it found some and it's happy. So that's the Peperomia Silver Ripple. Quite small, but this one will do well in a terrarium setting. So I'm just going to set that in there. There we go. Next one is this other Peperomia. Now this is a little bit of a trickier thing. I should have grabbed a bigger bin, but for the time being, actually I'm going to grab a cookie sheet. Oh. It's a nice thing about being in the kitchen. Extra supplies, so I can always wash this one quite thoroughly afterwards. It's just dirt. Alright, so this one I'm going to slowly, and that's the other thing, the spade will come in handy. It's kind of hard to work a plant out sometimes, so you might have to sort of gently go down. Try not to nick any roots, but it's kind of in there quite good. This one, they do like to dry out a little bit more in the winter time, so it's doing quite alright, just being dried up a little bit in the pot. Let's keep that. So once again, I'm going to slowly work the soil off. Not going to be too aggressive with these roots. If you get some lower leaves that fall off, that's okay. This one was bigger, but I did a whole bunch of cuttings and tried to propagate them because you can do, I usually do water, but you can do soil. I haven't tried soil yet with these, but definitely something in the spring I'm going to look into. So this one here has a pretty good clump of soil. So I'm just going to use a root rake. I'm just going to gently try and work a little bit of that soil out. I don't want it too deep because the terrarium's not going to be very deep. So I want to keep it kind of shallow, but not take off too much. Like I said, don't want to be too aggressive with those roots. So what I'm doing here is I'm just slowly kind of working it, sort of combing it, very gently. You can do the bottom as well. If you find sort of a hard spot, you can use the corner sort of side tooth there. Just gently kind of run it along, and the soil will come apart. The other thing that I do with a lot of the plants that have sort of a really deep root system, and you're trying to put them in a pot that's maybe not as deep, or you should always upsize, but sometimes I've had it before where I upsize too much, I get too aggressive, and then I have to transplant it anyways. So it's terrible, but sometimes you gotta do it. But anyways, if it's too deep, you can just put it on your hand and lightly kind of just rub, just kind of knead it, squish it a little tiny bit, and you get a lot of that soil off. So that I think is pretty good for this plant. Once again, I'm just gonna set it on the top here. I want this one kind of in the middle, off to the side, it's just a good splash of color. Now the other one here is this Maranta. This is quite a big one. Still a little hesitant about it, but hey, I know it will do really well, and it will definitely add some backdrop color. So I'm just gonna slowly work this one out. I'm trying to keep that little guy in there, whatever that is. I'll leave that afterwards, in the description, after I research it a little bit more. Let's take a set this one aside for now. And this Maranta, they don't have very thick root systems usually, especially when they're developing like most plants, but compared to others like that Peperomia definitely had some thick roots, and usually those thicker roots are I call them water roots, but they're just the thicker roots that will go out, they'll absorb moisture, and then they kind of hold it. And the thinner, finer roots, those are the ones that are out there searching for nutrients for the canopy and the plant. So that's a pretty good size, you know, not very overly developed root system, but it's definitely established itself enough. So I'm going to put this in there. Just enough. I'm thinking like kind of right in the middle. You know, it's going to get bigger, but let's say that's looking pretty good so far. You have your little Peperomia, another one, Maranta, and then this palm I can put, so it just kind of, I'm just going to hold it there and see how that looks. Yeah, I mean the Maranta is kind of tricky. I might re-angle that one. I mean, it'll grow new leaves and everything. This one should actually be in the center. Maybe that's what I'll do, because they do grow and the leaves like to move, they like to shift. So I'm going to put this Peperomia closer off to the side. This one right up front here. They don't get very, very big. And then this one I'll put right sort of in the middle there. Being delicate. It's got a new leaf on the top. You know, it's doing good. It seems to be happy, but you know, for a terrarium, it's sort of a prime spot for these kind of plants. They love terrariums, that humidity and everything. So this one, spin it around. This is the back side here. I'm just gonna set it down gently. It's got a few good roots on it, but nothing too crazy. So I'm just setting it down there. What I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna grab a handful of soil. This is just gonna be the anchor. Try not to get it too much on that Maranta there. But I can get it on the palm because they're pretty easy to just shake off. Same with it down here on the sides. Usually you can have some tools that make it a little bit easier. I am just going by hand here. Shake off some of those leaves. Okay, now I'm going to go back in here and I'm just going to pat it down a little bit. Something like this would actually do well. Just the handle, just to kind of push that soil around. It moved over, you know, make sure those roots are covered. Make sure they're doing well. You don't want to bury them and suffocate the plant itself. So you want to be sure just to cover the roots, get it in there nicely. Once I get some decorative soil as well, that'll look pretty good, I think. Definitely, or decorative rock, I mean, not decorative soil. So there we go. Let's come around to the back side here. I'm just going to push that soil in. Make sure I get those Peperomia roots, and right in the middle of the pot too. Right in the middle. Kind of using my hand as a funnel as I slowly open it. It slowly falls out the fingers. Ooh, that was a big clump of bark. Don't need that anyways. Okay, and down along the side of the glass here, up front. There we go. Get it a little bit more. I kind of want to get my hands in there. I want to feel it. So far. Move that Maranta leaf and try and get that down. There we go, alongside Peperomia. I'm going to use the shovel just to kind of push that soil up against those roots there. There's a good amount of soil on that Maranta leaf, so I'm just going to kind of shake it off. There we go. Now for this palm tree, or Parlor Palm. Oh, it's a little bit of hard angles, but eventually you kind of find a way to work around them. Oh, they're pretty reluctant here, so they're pretty good. You can kind of squish them a little bit against glass. Just, you know, be careful. They are a little bit, they seem more delicate than they are, but at the same time you want to take your time. You don't want to rush through this kind of thing. Oh, can't forget about that little guy in there. Make sure he's got his soil. So with this one, get that soil right in the middle there. Cover all those plants up, shake off a little bit of that leaf soil. Don't need none of that. I know peperomias will not like that. One little leaf snapped off. See, that's why you kind of want to take your time. That Maranta is definitely not bad as well. So I'm thinking, you know, this is looking pretty good. I've got 2 peperomias, I've got a prayer plant, I got a Parlor Palm. This little guy here, it's kind of got the smallest, almost like a bulb. Oh, I think I know what that is. Can't remember the name, but I think I know. So I'm also going to put this little guy. I could either put him up on this side. I like this to be my front, but terrariums are nice, especially when they're like this. You could throw it in the back here. Just give it a little bit extra growing room. What I might do eventually is that Maranta, they grow quite quickly, and especially when they have humidity. So eventually that one will come out, and I could even just leave it as the Parlor Palm, 2 peperomias, and this little guy. So in the time being, I'm thinking I'm going to put him, yeah, I'll put him at the back there. Should have done this earlier, but I can work around that Parlor Palm. So I'm just going to kind of work it in a little bit to the soil, being gentle, because that was quite, I'd say, underdeveloped roots. You want to be very cautious with them, you know, you don't want to give them too hard of a time. There you go, little guy. Pack that soil down, perfect. So I'd say, you know, I've gone around, I've made sure all my plants, their root systems, they have soil. Try and make it as level as you can. I have mine kind of sloped a little bit, but I can kind of work it around a little bit more here. Just trying to put the front, just as long as those roots are well covered. That's what we want. I don't need aerial roots. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cover up some of that soil. Just a little bit of rock, you know, nothing too crazy. Those plants, some of them can be pretty small. They don't need a whole lot. I don't want to have them pummeled with rock. Oh well. Okay. On this side. The nice thing about terrariums is as long as you're using plants that they don't get massive, like I was thinking even a pothos, but I know how quickly they would grow in here. They would love it, but you'd need something really big for them. Or you'd have to just leave them in there for a short period of time. And they like to dry out a little bit more between waterings. That seems to really help them, at least I found. So I wouldn't put a pothos in a terrarium, not one this size, but you can kind of use anything with a terrarium. As long as, you know, the plants, they have a little bit of room to grow and well grouping. You know, you don't want to put like a cactus terrarium and then have something like a Maranta or Calathea. That just wouldn't go well. Oh yeah, that's the other thing. I had my white fusion Calathea. I was going to add just a small little piece of it because I was cleaning up the other day and the small piece kind of fell over, kind of broke off almost. And I know you can't do leaf, so I went to go in for a quick little root divide because it kind of pulled over a little bit more of the plant than I had thought. and I did get a cutting, but that fell off, and then I thought, oh, I could maybe do this is a Maui Queen Calathea, and this is one that I got at the hardware store that wasn't doing so well, so I thought, well, whatever, I'll just leave the leaf off. So just go around and check, you know, your soil's pretty much covered. You know, I'm not going to cover all of it. It's just kind of a little bit more eye appealing, you know, but soil's nice too. I like soil. There we go. Get that down in there. Perfect. So I'll bring this closer for a shot. I have this little guy, Parlor Palm. He seems to kind of fallen over. Oh, it's that rock. There we go. Parlor Palm, Maranta, Peperomia, and the other Peperomia just up there. Perfect. So now the other thing that I'm going to do is water. So this is a little bit too big of a can. Let me get something a little smaller. Okay. So I have this little guy. This can's empty. I have distilled water that I've been using in the wintertime for some of my calatheas because they're not really digging my whole tap water situation. In the city, we do have, you know, chlorine, salts, fluoride, and all that fun stuff. So, it's warm. That's why I like using the jugs too. Okay, so I'm gonna actually try and get some of the leaves just to give them a little bit of a rinse. Do that. You know, you just work your way around nice and slow. I don't want to give it too terribly much water because I want to have it sort of let the plants find their own way. You know, you can see it's a little dry over there by that Peperomia side, so I can give it a good shot of water. No, it's not quite dry all the way to the bottom, but you don't want it muddy. That's what that nice thing about those rocks at the bottom. So I'm just going to give a little bit of a splash all the way around. Get that little guy. Get that one down there. There, I think that should do good. Oh, got a little bit on the counter. There we go. I'd say that's perfect. And you can see at the bottom, if I tilt it, there's a little bit of water that comes up there, but that's okay. I'm gonna leave this open for a little while. I'm gonna get that soil there too. That one Maranta leaf in the middle, it's kind of shielding the rest of the plants from getting water. I'm just gonna lift it up. Get some good water in there. There we go. I think that's pretty cute. Yeah, I'm gonna leave it open, you know, let the air kind of fluctuate in. It will hold the humidity quite nicely, but I do have the lid if I should want, you know, if it's dry or if, you know, anything like that, I could cover the lid if I think it'd help. But I think for this one, I'm just gonna, for the most part, leave it open. So yeah, that's pretty much for the terrarium. I'll keep you guys posted on how it does. You know, it's nice compact size. You can get them bigger, you can get them smaller. There's lots of different methods out there to do terrariums. But this is just one of the ones that I've seen on videos and kind of researched and found that it would help. And keep in mind, definitely with like your plants that you're using, try and group them all together, same kind of care that they would like, and humidity loving plants. Like these Peperomia, they have quite succulent like leaves, but they like humidity. So we're gonna give that a try and we'll see how she grows. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. My name's Kelly from Houseplants Gone Wild. If you liked the video, if you kind of liked the idea that I had, feel free to like and subscribe, and I'll do my best to keep coming out with videos. Thank you.